Are you recording it?
I will be in a moment. All right, and let's record.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, and that we're good. We have all 5 board members have logged in. So Jennifer, whenever you're ready, we can take this away.
Okay, I call the May South Whidbey Parks and Rec District Board of Commissioners meeting to order at 6:03, and we do have a quorum.
I did not, on public comment, I did not receive any requests to be on this. I did not receive any letters or emails requesting to be read as public comment. Okay, then we will move ahead to the approval of the minutes. Has everyone reviewed the minutes from the April meeting? And are there any changes that need to be made? All right, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. The motion has been first and seconded, and we approve, we need to approve the minutes, so we'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Mr. Aye.
Eric, did you chime in?
Aye.
I did. Eric, aye. Again.
All right. Jennifer, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the minutes are approved for April 2021. Matt, would you please lead us through the summary treasurer's report?
Which should be yes, I will.
Yeah, if you can see it. Again, reminder, the future-looking bars are the budget projection, and so the overlapping ones you see, we just show the actuals for the first 4 months. So this is through April, and then the blue line is our net, and comparing that to the magenta line, which is the budget forecast net. And as always, favorable is up. So the fact that the blue line is above the magenta line is good. And that is now to the tune of 105,000 favorable. That's because of a significant jump in expense favorability that we'll talk about when we get to that slide. So, but we're on the good side and projected to stay there. Next slide shows revenue that's 24K favorable cumulative over 4 months. So we're averaging about 6,000 a month. And you can see it's not totally linear, but close in favorability on revenue, mostly associated with the levy. And then the expense profile shows a knee in the curve for April. That's because we had tentatively put money for pickleball expansion, 36,000 in April. And so that didn't happen, but it's just going to hold for a future month if and when we decide to do that and spend that money. So we're 81K favorable, but we're really more linear than that. If you project it over the year, we'll bounce that back down when we do spend that money. So that's where the big green line, the capital purchase versus budget, came from. Next slide. And this shows the fund balances again on plan through April. Any questions on any of those 4? The only other thing I'll mention with budget, just because it just came up, we got the small water system management plan. There are some budget implications in that plan. So as you go through and review that, I've already sent some comments to Doug about it, but just note that there's some money in there that is for not current year, well, actually for current year and for future years in the 5-year budget projection. So talk about that in more detail at the next meeting once those have been quantified.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
If there's no questions, we'll go on. Go ahead.
Yep, no, go ahead. You're doing fine.
Okay, I was just going to say, if no questions on that, you can go to the vouchers, which you see here. Do you want to highlight any changes, Doug?
Yeah, I'm just scrolling down. There was only one change. We did have our Costco membership renewal come out this month on the Visa. That was the only change from when you saw it, and that was a $60 cost.
All right, are there any questions on the vouchers? All right, then I would
If there are
entertain.
no questions, I'll make a motion to approve the vouchers for 65,762.41 from the M&O fund.
And do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
All right. It has been moved and seconded that we approve the vouchers for May 19th, 2021 for the M&O fund of $65,762.41. All those in favor say aye.
Eric, aye.
Krista, aye.
Josh, aye.
Matt, aye.
Jennifer, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it and the motion passes. Doug, would you lead us through the staff report, please?
I would be happy to. Staff report for this month. We are starting to get some good news now. We have yet to hear officially what that means, but we are starting to hear about, we have heard that the state will be going to reopen on June, as of June 30th is the projected date. We are currently, the entire state is in phase 3. And we are being told there will be updated guidance from the state on masking because the state is adopting the CDC guidelines, which are now much more relaxed for those who have vaccination. But we're waiting. We can't really react on those for programs or for field usage or for anything until such time as we see what they actually mean. I am in communication with a couple of different entities on that and waiting to hear official news. Swim lessons, we are running on a limited basis, 4 kids per lesson. Once folks have a chance to sign up for one lesson, we'll email our participants and invite them to enroll for more. We're looking at this point that that's probably not going to be a likelihood that most of the lessons will fill up, and we won't have additional options available. And then the swim coordinator has opted to run the swim team on their own, so they're not going through us for that. Summer registration is going extraordinarily well. We're planning to open registration on the triathlon early next week after another update from Governor Inslee to see where we're at, because that may change how we do things even more. Yoga in the park went really well, had a great session and a great experience. And then here's some photos from some clam digging we did, clam digging class, as well as from yoga, one from yoga in the park. Facilities and grounds, we really have nothing special to report this month. I know you guys are all aware of this with your yards and your grassy areas, but right now we're just trying to keep up with mowing, weed eating, and ball field maintenance. Soccer finished up their initial go round of their academy kind of sessions and now have asked about doing a second set in June for a 3-week session of another academy. So we're working with them to get that put together and fixed up, and there shouldn't be any issues with that unless they have other teams that are wanting to play at the same time from their group. Director's items. Received the first draft of the small water system management plan mid last week, and got the updated version this afternoon that Matt referred to. There are going to be some budget implications in it going forward, and we will have to figure those all out and get those all taken care of. Mostly it's going to probably be some future upgrades with the construction aspect, as well as some monitoring and an operational kind of thing. We may have to contract out for a portion of the operation of the system because there is a requirement that there is a certified operator. We do not have one on staff, and that is really almost a full-time job in and of itself. I did meet with Davido to discuss taking on the septic system. There's more on that in the regular agenda. We do need to design that prior to proceeding with phase 1 construction on the campground. Had a meeting with Matt, Jennifer, some folks from the foundation, Senator Mazzal, and Representative Gilday. We discussed everything we have going on, the campground, the pool project, the property acquisition, amphitheater, pickleball courts. Both Representative Gilday and Senator Mazzal were supportive and very, very interested in what we had to say. More again on that in our comprehensive plan agenda item. I am still contacting pretty much now every second day Representative Paul's office, trying to reschedule or schedule a meeting with him on site with the same topics on the agenda. Had a few meetings on the amphitheater project, and I can update that again on the comprehensive plan agenda item. I'll get into that more there. But meetings with our two commissioners that are on that commission, as well as with some people with the Rotary Club of South Whidbey, and doing some looking into more detailed kind of plans and going forward on that. And then beginning to look at the standards for meeting in person as a board and restarting our regular meetings in person. Again, there's an agenda item on that in this regular meeting. We also just had yesterday a meeting with the foundation and with the consulting group on the aquatic center planning. And again, Matt and I just had that yesterday, so more on that in the regular agenda and the comprehensive plan stuff. Any questions on anything in the staff report?
Any thoughts on
Just
why we're not getting
go ahead.
Representative Paul?
I'm sorry?
Any idea on why we're not getting any response from Representative Paul?
I don't know. I have email contact for his legislative aide, and she was very open to the idea, and just it was a scheduling issue with the first date. It was not that he did not want to come. Initially, it was he was not fully vaccinated and wanted to have some concerns about masks. But then when I got back and sent it out and said we would mask up, he was already booked for that time. So I am just continuing to reach out every couple of days and say, hey, we wanted to get this scheduled and we want to have him come down, and I'm waiting to hear back.
Okay, thanks, Doug.
And then Matt, you had a question?
No, I answered it myself.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, if there are no further questions for the staff report, we will move on to unfinished business and the comprehensive plan programs.
So this was the bulk of what I did this past month. It was a lot of trying to chase down things here. Small water system management plan. We have the final draft. I got it today. Matt has sent me his look through list, and I am going to be looking through it starting tomorrow myself in detail. I've also given it to Tom to review for detail and make sure that it's accurate and up to date. I have already sent it out to the board. I would ask each to kind of go through it, and if you have questions, send them through to me, and I will get those kind of addressed. This is one of the things that we have to have in place to add in anything else on our water system. So this impacts not just the campground, but the potential aquatic center project. Anything else that we are adding to our water system is impacted by this. We have to have this before proceeding with anything. We're not going to approve. I had this down as a possible approval if we had had time to actually look at it. We're not going to approve it at this meeting. I'm not even recommending that at this point. Since I haven't had a chance to read through it, I don't want it approved at this point. I want to look at it, digest it, look at the implications and the cost implications, and then we might have to have a discussion. Matt might have to sit down with myself and with Peggy to kind of look at what that impact is and how we are kind of dealing with that for this year. Next year, we can obviously put it into the budget from day one. Septic system design is another requirement from the county. We have to have a design of it. I did receive a quote from Davido to complete that work. It was actually, I was surprised that it was not more than what it was, which is good. The not to exceed quote was included in the board packet, and I'll go over that in a second. But one of the things that I wanted to do tonight was ask the board for approval of that. That is a campground item, so it would come out of the campground funds and would be as a design item, I believe, reimbursable with the grant. So I would recommend approval of that. I don't think there is anyone out there that will do this work any cheaper, because Davido has all of the previous information ready to go and was the design, the engineering firm in the design group that we had initially. So we didn't really have any other companies that were even interested in bidding when I started to reach out. So I pretty much gave up after a couple of calls. So that will be an approval item in this comprehensive plan, but let me get through everything else and we'll come back to discuss that. We had a really good meeting with Matt, Jennifer, Senator Mazzal, and Representative Gilday and the folks from the foundation. The Aquatic Center was a big focus of that. They were very supportive of the concept, had some ideas that they brought forward, and were open to the idea of us approaching them for a allocation in the capital budget for the state. So we also, since that time, have received the update, the information back on the wetland study. I just got the actual full wetland study, I think it was today or yesterday, and again, prepping for the board meeting today, so I have not had a chance to look at that in depth either, just a quick glance. So I will be circulating that to the board. That full report is going to be something that we're going to have in hand before we can do anything with the Aquatic Center. Matt, Jennifer, did you want to? Well, let me do this first. Matt and I did have a meeting today, or sorry, not today, yesterday afternoon with the consulting group and the foundation on their survey and feasibility kind of planning forward kind of things, and there was some information in there that we're actually going back and meeting with the foundation. Matt and I will be meeting with them tomorrow afternoon at 3 to kind of go through that and get more information and kind of go from there and plan on that. So all of that's kind of going on with the aquatic facility. I'm going to give Jennifer a chance to comment on the meeting with Representative Gilday and Senator Mazzal, and then I'll let Matt comment on both those meetings. So Jennifer?
Just that it was a great meeting. Matt was wonderful in going out there and actually flagging out the footprint for the aquatic facility so that we had a really good visual when we were standing out there in the middle of the building. So the visual was great. Great support coming back. Matt did a great job in presenting to both Senator Mazzal and Representative Gilday, and had great buy-in, made some connections with Representative Gilday to circle back through to another group that he's familiar with, and Matt can talk more about that. And overall, it was a good plan. Senator Mazzal was a little pushed for time, so we didn't get to actually walk the entire property as we had hoped we could. We just stayed right there at the aquatic facility and pointed and talked, and Doug had great maps. So we look at maps of the campground and other things. So it was a good meeting. Matt?
I'd agree. I think we had a good group there who had, some connections to our representatives. Danielle Bishop from the foundation was there, or from the pool committee was there, and she's worked with Senator Mazzal in the past on land trust projects, so they were familiar with one another. Doug happens to be Senator Mazzal's neighbor up there in the prairie, so that also helped us. Senator Mazzal has a historical connection with the North Whidbey pool and the projects there. He indicated he was part of the group in the Senate that got some of the funding line items approved for North Whidbey, the capital improvement that was about $1.6 million, and the roof project just most recently that was like $250,000 capital line item. And he stated to us that he thought that one role of government was to provide some infrastructure in communities, and one of the specific infrastructure items that he highlighted where it was pools. So that was good feedback. Representative Gilday, I didn't realize he'd grown up in Stanwood, but he grew up in Stanwood, and evidently in Stanwood, they had the exact same experience. They had a local private club that was not super affordable for folks. And then they built the Stanwood YMCA public pool, and he had enjoyed it and thought that was a fantastic thing for the community, not just for swimmers, but for everybody. So he had a connection that way as well. So I think we had strong support. They also indicated that there was room in the state capital budget based on, the various puts and takes and federal government input from COVID and other things, that they were relatively heavy on capital funds. So, and they encouraged us as a group to come to them this summer and to make the proposals on what to put in for January 2022 when they go back and bring the capital budget to the table. So I said we had some personal connections to them, which was great. And they're also, both of them had pool experience in recent past, and we're strong supporters. And the only thing I'll mention about Senator Paul is that, or Representative Paul, right, is that he put out, they're doing a town hall actually in 5 minutes here, the three of them together. And he put out in his announcement today to constituents that he's partnering with Senator Lovelett, who's from Anacortes, on ferry projects. And she's the one who supported the Lopez Island pool and got $1.5 million total in the state capital budget, 1 year in the supplemental budget and another year in the regular budget to support Lopez Island. So I think once we eventually get to talk to Dave Paul, we'll be able to kind of tie those things together. And I think we'll end up with 3 representatives supporting the project, I would expect. So good news there.
Yeah. That's great news, Matt. Thanks.
So then, Matt, did you want to add anything on the meeting we had yesterday?
Yeah, well, as Doug said, the foundation, as you know, has funded this feasibility study that's been ongoing. The first step was they said they determined the project was feasible, so that was a good thing. The second, they're working on the programming for the facility and then essentially a layout so that they can ultimately come up with, a concept layout and renderings that we can use in things like grant applications and trying to raise private money and talking to the state, all those kinds of things help. And what we got back from them in their initial estimates was kind of a sticker shock construction cost estimate that looks like is tied to this, current environment of, kind of global impacts on lumber prices and on, other such things. So we're just trying to now figure out, Doug said we're going to start meeting tomorrow, figure out, what part of that is just this COVID spike kind of thing and what part of it's real. So anyway, more to come there. We got pencils to sharpen, but anyway, so the feasibility study is ongoing. They're working towards actually coming up with a concept and then figuring out what we think it's really going to cost. The other thing that is about to start, the foundation is funding a capital campaign feasibility. So to determine what's the capacity of the local community to donate, significant capital. So I think they're going to spend $5,000 or $10,000 in June to bring this feasibility consultant, the one who was successful in raising $6 million for the city of Fircrest pool. So she's coming to Whidbey Island. She's going to interview some people, including Doug, and as part of this feasibility study to determine, and the objective is to raise I think 5 million in private capital, and her study is going to determine whether or not there's 5 million in private capital to be raised. So that's starting in June. The interviews will be happening, I think, the second weekend of June. So Doug, it'll be on your calendar for, I think, Friday of the end of the first week. So that's another step that's happening. That is aiming at actually starting to interview potential donors over the summer towards that goal of 5 million in private capital. So that's another thing that's kicking off here in the next couple weeks.
Okay, cool. Waterman property, we've got an agenda item to talk about the name review. I did have Shelley Ackerman and her group review the name suggestions, and they came up with a few more, so I do have an email update to the list. So we can talk about that in the next agenda item. The only other thing I wanted to address in this one is the amphitheater. Kind of bring you up to date to where we are. I did meet with Josh and Jennifer, and we kind of looked at what we were talking about, what we wanted to see there, costing and all that kind of stuff, and what our next steps were. The Rotary Club of South Whitby does have still $15,000 towards this project, which is good news. I have, since I met with them, since I met with Jennifer and Josh, met again with Jack Ing and Jean-Marc Juas from the Rotary Club of South Whitby. They have verified that they do have 15,000 and could potentially raise more towards the project. So we would be looking at going at matching grants and trying to get costs and designs nailed down for next spring. In doing that, I also sat down with Jack and Jean-Marc a second time with a gentleman named Mark Schuster, who also has an interest in the project, is a musician in the area. He has the Rotary Club of South Whitby had set aside a few $100s to do some studies. And they have a sound engineer on board that they are sending the plans, the drawings to kind of get that opinion of, hey, it should be, the pitch of the roof should be higher, the pitch of the roof should be lower, construction materials, what materials are you looking at? It should be made out of, so giving us some feedback as to from a sound perspective, what does this look like? Now, from a sound perspective, from my understanding of sound, being a kind of backseat musician kind of person, my understanding is when you're outside, once you get past about 10 feet from the stage, it doesn't really matter. So we're going to get the perspective and see, and then we're going to start looking at drilling down into costs, getting designs going, and getting things ready for grant cycle next year. With 15,000 and using that as 10% matching 2 grants, we'd be looking at a total project right now of maximum 150,000. My initial rough ballpark estimates are 250,000, so we'd need to raise another $10,000 for that. But that's just very, very rough, not really looking at details yet, and we're going to drill down into that. And as Matt said, with the numbers we got on the aquatic center from the consulting group, there is a certain, I can tell you from personal experience, I had a fence built and it just got finished last week, and it went from about $6,000 for the fence to about $10,000 for the fence, just materials. So there is a huge uptick in that cost. So that's something that we're going to be aware of as we're doing these numbers, and kind of have those people on speed dial to revisit and go, yeah, we need to look at these. Can you just recycle it and tell me with materials, what is this going to cost us now? One of the big costs will be bringing power up there. What we'd probably like to do as part of this is bring 3-phase power in from the road all the way up. We could also use that for future use at the aquatic center, and our staff could potentially do the trenching for that and make sure that we reduce the cost. That's going to be a huge cost with doing power from the road, is digging that trench all the way up. So if our staff can do the trench, that saves us that labor cost, which is a huge cost. So that's just where we are on that. So the only other thing I had in comprehensive plan was really to kind of go through the septic system quote. Let's see if I can zoom in. Can everybody see that? I'll minimize this. So septic system quote. This is to design a septic system for the campground. It assumes that we have a couple of facilities pumping into that, and it assumes the full build out of 72 campsites. This is a not to exceed quote of $4,886. So that would be the maximum, and it would be coming out of the campground funds that we had received and be basically matched 50% from further grant funds. I do recommend approval of this. I don't think we're going to get anybody to do it any cheaper than this, and have not been able to find anybody to even quote on it. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I just make a quick comment. I mean, to me, it's incredibly reasonable given the septic quotes that we were getting for the aquatic center. And I can also say that during that time, I was told by 3 different septic people that they don't even have time to look at RFQs. So the fact that we have a quote from somebody we know and it's reasonable, to me, it just seems great. So thanks for getting it.
Right. Any further questions or discussion? Right. I would entertain a motion to approve the septic build from David O Construction.
Actually, it's just a design. It's not a build.
A design, sorry. Thank you. Design. Thank you.
I'll make that motion that we go forward with the Davido quote of $4,836 for the design of the septic system.
It's actually, can I amend that? Can I amend that for you? It's actually 4,886.
Thank you. Sorry, can't get that detail on my screen.
I'll second that motion.
All right. Motion has been made and seconded that we approve the David O quote for $4,886 for the design of the septic system. All those in favor say aye.
Eric, aye.
Krista, aye.
Josh, aye.
Matt, aye.
Jennifer, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it and the motion passes.
Okay.
We'll move on to the Waterman property park naming discussion, Doug, is that correct?
That's correct. So on this, I did receive some names from the school district, as well as some other people, just regular people in the community. This is the full list of names that I received, if you can see it on your screen. It is not a huge list. Sorry, wrong button. No, it's just adding, never mind. So what I did was I sent these over to Shelly Ackerman and her group for review. They have then gone through and said they didn't have a lot. They suggested a few more names. So then I have from them, let me pull that up. I just received the email this afternoon. So their thoughts were as follows. They liked, no real obvious good names popped up from this list, but here's the ones that got a couple sort of likes. Max Welton Trails, Mossy Trails, South Whidbey Community Trails, not Park, as that would be confusing. And then they offered to add in the following ideas. South Whidbey Schools Trails, Huckleberry Circle, Connector Park, or Trails rather than Park, or South Whidbey Connector Park, or Community Connector Park, or Max Welton Connector Park. Then my understanding is that Jennifer and Matt had a phone conversation as Trails Committee and discussed these and said that they liked the idea of Max Welton Trails Park. So those are kind of the options that we have. I can put up the full list for you, or I can leave the email, but this is a discussion item. You can also tell me we don't like any of those, go back and run it again, and we can try it again.
Matt, do you want to share with the group what the rationale was for Max Welton Trails and the naming convention that we were trying to follow?
Sure, yeah, and trying to follow a naming convention similar, we call the other trails property trust land trails, so call this something trails. And the school's name or the school's association, my preference is to have a parks association with it and a place association. So since it was one of the first ones in Shelley's Save the Trails list, and it was on the original list of suggestions, it seemed to fit, and as non-controversial as it can get from a association with a person or something else. So that's where Max Welton Trails came out. And it was I originally thought Max Welton Trails Park, but I think that idea of, if we call it Trustland Trails, let's call it Max Welton Trails. Seems reasonable to me.
Krista?
Yeah, I just have a question. Like, we don't quite know exactly for sure what we're going to do with it, right? I mean, yeah, there are going to be trails involved, but there might be perhaps other possibilities. If so, then that would speak to doing Max Welton Trails Park, just so that we can keep it flexible. Or if it's already been decided that this is going to be 100% trails and it's only going to be trails, then Max Welton Trails makes sense. But I kind of like giving us a little bit of flexibility and keeping park in there, maybe.
Yeah, I would just say that the conversation as part of the acquisition and the grant was around, just preserving the properties fundamentally. And as it abuts another trails property, the only conversations we've had to date have been around trails in that property. So, yeah. So I'm okay with either one, either calling it Max Welton Trails or Max Welton Trails Park. I think that's reasonable.
Any further discussion?
When you first look at Max Welton Trails, if you're not from the area, Max Welton Trails can signify a lot of different things. A private residence, a private entrance, a community entrance. I'm in favor of Max Welton Trails. I think that sounds great. I'm actually just bringing it up because as I look at that and I look at all these, I think to myself of places I've gone. And if you're not familiar with the area, you're not quite sure, is this accessible to everyone? Is this a private community type thing? Is this a school district owned area? And maybe that community piece in there, and I don't know if the word community or something else that relates to that might be a good idea. That's at least my approach when I first look at it.
So Max Welton Community Trails.
So,
Yes.
I mean, I get where you're getting at there, Eric, and it kind of makes sense. What I would say is that on that end, we're going to probably have a sign that says South Woodby Parks and Recreation District on the sign when you say so. It'll be South Woodby Parks and Recreation District in the logo, and then Max Welton Trails Park or Max Welton Trails, whatever we want to call it. I don't know that we need to specify that it is public access. We're also going to have the RCO sign little RCO sign on there that said it was funded by tax dollars. I mean, I get where you're getting at, and it does make sense. I'm just saying that I don't know that it's.
I was just thinking when it pops up sometimes, if you're looking something up and it pops up Max Welton Trails, and I understand that. I understand that it can be clarified by a sign. Yeah, I'm probably overthinking it, but.
I think
I like
signage that we have at Trustland Trails. I think the clarity would be there, like it is with
Yeah,
Trustland.
what you said, Eric, I think the point about Max Welton, I think, is a really interesting one. Of that, like it's a place that people associate with lots of different things as a road that goes all over the place, right? So I think that there's an opportunity there to maybe, at that, entry kiosk, where you're going to find a map, and that there's we use it as a way to display some history of the Maxwelton Valley and the headwaters of the Maxwelton Creek. Talk about that, just, the salmon aspect of it. I think we could probably get some volunteer input on, and from the schools to come up with, some kind of interpretive educational material associated with Maxwelton and highlight it that way. I think that would be really neat.
Mm-hmm. And then tie it in with Trustland Trails, where the headwater is, and the future development of that trail that we went into through the woods. It's a thought.
Yeah.
Especially given that this one is right next to the school, and we want to try and get the schools involved when we do develop that trail for the salmon and for the trailhead. That could be a really neat time with the kids.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Eric.
I was thinking about the salmon habitat further down Maxwelton, and sometimes people refer to that as Maxwelton Trails. I'm not trying to overthink it. Once again, just thinking about Maxwelton, that term, the use of Maxwelton is used quite a bit. I think it's a great idea. I like it much better than connector.
Yeah, and that trail property, I was just thinking about that too. That one I've always heard called the outdoor classroom.
Right. I know the kids talk
just
about
in my experience.
Right. I'm good with it. I'm completely good with it. Like I said, I'm probably just overthinking how that appears to people outside of South Whidbey.
I think it's a good point. I think we have to always think about, like, okay, if somebody has their phone and they're Googling, how can we most easily convey to them what this is?
Right, and it should show up. I mean, if we keyword it right on our webpage, and in their normal mapping process, they would map it as a public park, and it would show up with that iconography in Google Maps or in Apple Maps, but it won't be instantaneous. They only do those surveys periodically, and especially on Whidbey. So, but it would eventually show up in their own, whether we signed it or didn't sign it at all, no matter what name it had, it would show up in their iconography as public.
And it will end up on the Island County website, tied in with all of the parks there. So that would be some good exposure to help with the meta tags and all of that for organic searches.
Yeah, and I'll have to double check. I think we might have put it in as changing it to a parks designation already, but if it's not, I'm going to go ahead and do that. Have it be rather than a forestry program or anything like that. I think we took it and put it into parks, but I'll double check that and make sure that if that's not done, that we do it.
So we do have the option of asking out to the schools to look for a second round of names and defer this until June if anyone feels that's necessary, or we can move forward with naming it.
I'm okay with Maxwelton Trails.
So this would need a motion and a second to move forward.
So I think we need some further clarity on whether it's Maxwelton Trails or Maxwelton Trails Park. Krista, do you want to add any further comment to your discussion?
I mean, if we think that it's self-evident, then that's fine.
Yeah, I would say we should just, and I'm good with either one totally. I would just say that we should maintain consistency between them. So if we call this Maxwelton Trails Park, I would lean towards let's tweak the name of Trustland Trails and call it Trustland Trails Park too. So they seem like they're from the same organization. And I like that's the sound of that also. So I'm good either way.
How onerous is it to change Trustland Trails to Trustland Trails Park?
That's a good question.
The only thing that would be associated with that would be a cost in changing the sign. Everything else would be, not that onerous. And that's one of the carved signs that is very detailed, and I don't
And
know
there's
that
two of them.
Yeah, there's two of them. So there's a couple of signs that would need to be changed. If we truly wanted all the
You
signs
might not need to. Yeah, you might not need to change like the carved signs. You could just change the sign that points you there and the official name in our documentation and the cartography, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, we could totally do that.
Any further discussion? All right, I would entertain a motion for naming the Waterman property.
Okay, so I think if I understand where this is going is naming the Waterman property the Max Welton Trails Park.
Okay, could I get you to put that in the form of a motion, please, Krista?
Right. I am making a motion of naming the Waterman property the Max Welton Trails Park.
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion to name the Waterman property the Max Welton Trails Park. All those in favor say aye.
Eric, aye.
Krista, aye.
Josh, I.
Matt, aye.
Jennifer, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it and the motion passes.
So based on that discussion, Matt, did you want to make a second motion to change the name of Trustland Trails to Trustland Trails Park?
Yeah, good point. So I'll make a motion to update, not on the wooden sign, but on our own park's naming and cartography, Trustland Trails to Trustland Trails Park.
I'll second that motion.
All right, I didn't get that verbatim, Matt, but I'm going to go with we will update the name sans signage, but in our literature.
Yeah, everything other than the wooden. Yeah, everything other than the wooden signs.
To the Trustland Trails Park. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Eric, aye.
Krista, aye.
Josh, I.
Aye.
Jennifer, aye. All those opposed say no. All right, the ayes have it and the motion passes.
Cool. All
All
right.
right, thank you for your help there, Doug.
2 more items and they're in new business.
Hey, congratulations, we have a new park.
Yay! All right. New business. So, really on this one, all I'm going to say, the Small Water System Management Plan has been circulated. You guys all should have a Dropbox link to it in your email. Please read through it and get me your comments. There are implications to our budget, so we will have to sit down and look at this, and we'll bring this back to you again next month. But I'd ask everyone to read through it. If you have questions, concerns, please get them to me. I already have Matt's email. He's very efficient and a very fast reader, and got it back to me almost, before I sent it out to him, which was amazing. So
I was just sitting here waiting for the meeting to start, so I had 45 minutes to kill.
Yeah, there you go. So read through
Made
it,
it up.
get it back to me. And I'm going to sit down with Tom and have him he's going through it as well. I'll go through it as well. And we'll look at that again at the next meeting and talk about implications, and we'll have recommendations at that point. At this point, I've had it basically about 10 to 15 minutes longer than you guys have it in your email. So I've been prepping to get ready for the meeting all day. So I haven't had a chance to read through it. I barely had a chance to glance at what Matt wrote down and look at that and go, thank you. So we'll move on to that, but that's where we're at there. Any questions on that?
All right, it's my turn to overthink something. So the one that we got on Friday, I'm going to pitch, and I'm going to go with the one in the Dropbox.
Correct.
Thank you, sir.
142 pages of recycling.
Yeah, exactly. Gosh.
Yeah, just so people aren't thinking we're talking about $1 million, the maximum scope of budget impact that I read through was over the next 5 years is about 65,000. So it's not six figures. It's that kind of thing spread over 5 years. There's no good estimate in there of the task that they want us to do with high priority, which is this cross connection. Mechanical or a physical change to the way it's piped, and some oversight. So that was unquantified in cost, but it's that order of magnitude, 50 to 75,000 over 5 years.
Right, and again, I like I said, I haven't had a chance to sit down with Davido on this yet. I plan to do that after I've had a chance to read through it and kind of. They basically told me they were trying to get it to me, early this week, and I emailed them today and said, okay, are you getting it to me for the meeting or not? And they got it to me. So wanted to share it with you, but yeah, we need to drill down into it and sit down with them and go, what are the costs for this? What are the costs for this? What are we looking at total? And then we can kind of look at a plan. But again, this is really not it's not a, do we do it or not? It's how do we do it? It's how are we going to take care of it? So that's where we're kind of at with that one. Any other questions? Okay.
I'll just say, Doug, thanks for organizing that. That to me, it's something we got to have. It's a great guiding document on how to run our water system and how to plan for the future. So I think it's fantastic we have it. And thanks for pulling it together.
Well, you're thanking me for doing my job, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, but it's something we haven't had for. I don't think we've ever had one before. Am I right?
It is not required until we get to this point and we're expanding the system. So we were too small. If we make no changes, we don't need this. It's because we are looking at adding a campground, because we are looking at adding an aquatic center. We need this plan to be able to be able with the state to be kosher and copacetic. And so yes, we've never done it before, but we haven't had to before. Now we're going to be required to.
Right.
So this is just
when you read through it though, like it just makes a ton of sense. Like
it does.
It's just I think it's a great guiding document.
It's really going to help us stay organized and stay on top of things, and it's going to get us the help that we need in certain areas, I'm sure. So, any other questions? Okay.
All right, let's move on to returning to in-person board meetings discussion.
So again, this is going to be a short one because I've looked over the guidance, and as I was preparing this, I put this on the agenda thinking to myself, we're going to do this soon. And then on Thursday, Governor Inslee came out and said that, we're going to change everything at the end of June, and we're going to change everything here. What I was starting to look at was people are getting vaccinated, people are able to go out again. I reached out to the county health department. I've been playing phone tag with Keith Hickman, but he has responded to me. He's told me that the biggest thing right now is the masking guidance. I check the governor's website multiple times a day on their guidance to see if it's been updated, and it has not. And I see Krista you're shaking your head because you're probably going through the same thing I'm going through with your business, and I get it. it is my understanding is that when Keith left me the message, he told me the issue right now is labor and industry with the state is looking at this because they issued the initial guidelines for masks based on the CDC's guidelines. So those guidelines now have to be updated through labor and industry. He anticipated that we would have those end of this week. So hopefully the end of this week, we should have a better idea of what's going on. But I also wanted to put it out there to you guys. We really don't have a ton of technology on site. We could continue to do something like this on site with it up on a screen, and have the ability for people to call in. We don't have, huge broadband Wi-Fi there. I mean, it's not gigantic, but we can make it work. It is an option to do that and still have people have the ability to call in. So I wanted to start looking at that because I think that's going to be a discussion that we're going to have over a couple of meetings. And at this point, I'm kind of waiting to see, because if we do open up on June 30th, and again, I don't know from the governor what we're going to be open on June 30th actually means. So we need to get those guidelines, and until we have those guidelines, we're kind of sitting here with our with our hands tied. We can't really move forward until we hear from the governor, or not from the governor. Sorry, I should rephrase that. From the state, because it's state health, it's labor and industries. We need that guidance to be able to say, and to be able to have fallback when we tell people, hey, you have to do this, or you don't have to do this. We need to be able to have that guidance from the state. That's where we are. I was hoping to have more information, but as yet, it's not posted, so there's nothing we have. So I'll try to answer any questions if anybody has any, but I think what we'll do is we'll bring this back again in June. Jennifer.
Once we do meet in person again, or as an interim option, is there anything that says that we have to meet at the Parks and Rec office? If there were a larger space available that had big gig available, could we use that space?
We do not have to meet specifically in our park office, I don't think, but we do have to advertise where we are meeting, and it has to be open to the public. Those are the only, as far as I know, and I'll double check that. I'll double check that if there's a location requirement that we meet on our property. I don't think there is.
All right, let me know, because our Windermere meeting room would certainly be of the proper size. We have the big gig there. And last week we just had the Lagoon Point Water Association meeting down there, and it went very well. Yeah,
and it's not to say that, if things don't change that we couldn't meet in person. It's really a question of, what the regulations are vis-a-vis masks for people and people following those. Like it sounds to me like if you are vaccinated, that basically takes the place of the mask, from what I'm hearing. Now, I want to see it in writing from the state so that we're making sure that we're doing it the right way. But that's what I'm seeing. Now, we could also meet outside, and that changes things as well. But we can meet outside for the summer, and then we'd probably be freezing, come September, October. So
I was just thinking from a standpoint of that the space is big enough so that if people were more comfortable with social distancing. We've got an HVAC system, so we know that the air would be recirculating rather than being in the Parks and Rec office where we melt in the summertime.
Right. So, any other questions? All right. Well, that's all I have, folks. If there's anything else.
Anyone? All right. Then we will adjourn the May 2021 South Whidbey Parks and Rec Board of Commissioners meeting at 19:01.
Okay, just a reminder, everybody, if you have not already done so, please send in your email with the voucher list approval. Does anybody need that amount?
Peggy was great and has it right on our email for us. So.
Perfect. Good to go then. So nobody needs it. All right. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
See you guys.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Take care.
See you guys. See you, Jennifer. See you, Josh. Bye, everyone.